Apps here. Today, I am going to explain a movie called In Transit, Leningrad, USSR, 1946. First winter after the end of the Great Patriotic War. Women's Transit Camp 3459. Every day, women-only camps host poor and unfortunate women and children who survived the horrors of war. Caring for the sick and wounded, they provide them with first aid, after which they are sent to hospitals, shelters, and other places for their further residence and rehabilitation after hostilities. Dr. Natalia is forced to work here and look after her demented husband Andrei, who has changed a lot after being seriously wounded. Man cannot live without medication, so she visits him daily and gives him the pills. Andrei does not want to be treated and only imitates taking medication, after which he puts pills in a special box. Soon, 2 trucks arrive at the camp and bring Germans, who were taken prisoner as a result of the war. Women are supposed to take care of 53 people, but 2 of them died on the way here, which already makes their task easier. Captain Olga Alexandrovna is outraged by this, and she is offered to file an official complaint. But this will not change anything, since an order has been received from above from Colonel Pavlov. Many captives are frightened, but others believe that they are women and should not be feared. Klaus and another German try to take off the clothes of the dead to keep warm, but one of them is immediately killed. Vera lashes out at them and calls them fascists who killed their family. Woman beats the prisoners with a stick, and the officers hardly manage to calm her down. Germans are driven into an old and dilapidated hangar, where they will live until a further decision is made regarding their fate. Looking out the window, men see how cruel Soviet women are, because they do not know mercy and hang up the murdered, demonstrating their disrespect for him. Natalia asks to be more lenient, but her idea is not supported, recalling how they were starving in Leningrad during the blockade. In the evening, women bring food to the prisoners. Vera still treats Germans with contempt and overturns the container of food. Men are hungry and pounce on the porridge lying on the floor like a pig. This only confirms Vera's opinion that they are pitiful and insignificant creatures that should be treated like animals. At the same time, not everyone is ready to sink to such a level. One of the self-respecting Germans is Max Borth, who refused to eat from the cold and damp ground. At the morning roll call, Vera continues to mock the prisoners and beats them with a stick for every extra word. Max is not afraid of such an attitude and calls the name of the murdered man, after which he asks to bury him humanly. Before dinner, one of the Germans helps modest Zina in the kitchen. Dropping a potato, Peter pulls it out from under the table and hits his head. Girl is amused by his clumsiness, but she is afraid to show sympathy for the man who killed Soviet women and children. The next day, Max, along with other prisoners, buries a man who was shot dead upon arrival at the camp. Soon, Colonel Pavlov arrives at the scene and summons Captain Olga Alexandrovna to him. He is extremely outraged by the soft conditions in relation to German prisoners, because many are not who they say they are. According to the colonel, some of them changed their names on purpose to avoid a military tribunal and a fair punishment. After Pavlov calls a doctor and asks to get close to one of the Germans in order to find out all their secrets. If woman refuses, her sick husband will be written off and sent to rest somewhere in Siberia. Having instructed to watch the captives more closely, Pavlov is about to leave when he suddenly notices Zina laughing at Peter's jokes. He is extremely outraged by girl's careless behavior, and Commander decides to punish her for it. Pavlov forces Zina to undress, despite the fact that it is freezing cold outside. Germans look at the naked girl without averting their eyes, which shames her. A little later, prisoners discuss Soviet women and whether it is possible to start relationships with them. Klaus offers to stay away from any relationship with these women because they are dangerous and bring death. Others do not share his opinion, believing that wonderful mistresses can turn out from Soviet ladies. In the evening, Olga Alexandrovna and Natalia discuss the current situation, and understand that someone is informing Pavlov, informing him about everything that happens in the camp. Sometime later, the colonel again arrives at the camp with the prisoners. In the ranks of unarmed Germans, he identifies 2 war criminals who committed atrocious crimes against the Soviet population during the blockade of Leningrad. No one can escape a punishment, so the men are taken away, and the next morning they are publicly executed. This instills even more fear in the prisoners, because they understand that they will not return home alive. Klaus continues to insist that Max get close to the doctor, who shows interest and sympathy for him. Max is also in love with Natalia, but he respects the woman too much and does not dare to have a frank conversation. Meanwhile, Zena finds a crying Peter with a photograph in his hands. His whole family died, and man does not understand the further meaning of life. Zena shares the grief of a suffering German, because her relatives were also killed in the war. In the evening, grief-stricken Zena and Peter meet to spend the night together. After passionate kisses, the couple makes love, feeling happy for the first time in years. Sometime later, Natalia invites Max to replace, and points out the rats running around her office. Man patches up a hole in the wall and talks to the doctor, trying to get to know the woman a little better. Soon the colonel again arrives at the camp and sees that prisoners have begun to get fat. He is unhappy with this and orders to reduce their ration by 1/3, because the Soviet people are starving and Germans in their care should not look better than the locals. During his speech, Pavlov notices the inappropriate behavior of Andrei, who is playing with the snow, and decides to talk to him. In the back room, a man tries to provoke an unhealthy soldier with a knife, but quickly realizes that it is better not to do this, because he can kill him, and does not even realize the horror of what happened. Elena, Natalia, and Olga Alexandrovna understand that the food allocated is not enough for the existence of the captives. Germans are malnourished and starting to get sick, so something needs to be done to be more human towards them. Doctor offers to send prisoners to the depot to Yakov. Captain is embarrassed by the cooperation of the Germans and the Jew, but she still decides to take this step. A couple of weeks later, Yakov visits Natalia and thanks her for the initiative, because Germans are hardworking and do their job well. Trying to make their life better, man offers to organize a musical group, since Germans love music, and the Soviet people will not refuse good or patriotic songs associated with a peaceful and happy life. Soon Yakov comes to the camp again to distribute musical instruments to those who can play. Klaus is dismissive of the Jew and dreams of killing him, but he is unable to do so. Other Germans do not worry about Jacob's nationality and take violins, button accordion, and other instruments to start rehearsing and learning new songs. Zina is pleasantly surprised because Peter is not only a pleasant man, but also a talented violinist who creates wonderful music. Meanwhile, Klaus suggests that Max turn in a couple of Germans so that no one will dig into their past and find out the real names of men. Max is outraged by the meanness of his comrade and former student because he did not expect that Klaus could sacrifice others to save his own skin. Natalia again calls Max to her, as rats turned out to be stronger than the fence that he fixed. In a personal conversation, the doctor reproaches prisoner for killing Soviet women and children. Max says that he did not do this, but he can understand Germans who went to such an act. There are no good people in war, and when a girl with a grenade runs at you, there is little choice. He does not justify it, but accepts the fact that sometimes a person simply does not have other options. Before Max leaves, Natalia asks him if Klaus is a war criminal, but man says nothing. Several months have passed. Zina is constantly sick, and girl understands that Peter is to blame for this, and not the spoiled food. Soon, she announces her pregnancy to the cook and doctor, which causes them a wave of discontent. At the same time, women are more concerned about the loss of food because someone stole all potatoes. Natalia is afraid that this information may reach Pavlov and receives a letter from Alina confirming her assumptions. As it turned out, not one of Olga Alexandrovna's subordinates writes denunciations, but Andrei does it. Natalia's husband is not fully aware of the correctness of his actions and hardly recognizes his wife, continuing to serve faithfully to only one person, Colonel Pavlov. Doctor offers Zina to terminate the pregnancy, but girl refuses to do so. Once outside, they see that Pavlov has already arrived at the camp. Someone accused Peter of stealing food, and he is forcibly driven into a car. Zina cries and asks Natalia to save father of her unborn child. Doctor realizes that Peter could not have committed the crime and goes to look for the stolen food. As it turned out, Vera was theft, for which she was also arrested, but no one would let Peter go either. Pavlov is sure that he is a war criminal anyway and deserves to be punished, even if they could not prove his guilt. Before the colonel leaves, Yakov invites him to a concert that will take place next weekend. Zina is very upset by what happened and takes her own life. In the morning, women find her, but it is too late. The next morning, women take the captured Germans out into the yard and force them to take off all their clothes. Frightened men believe that they will be killed now. Once in a closed room, the Germans understand that now they will be poisoned with gas so as not to feed and maintain. For a few moments, they realize that they were mistaken and deluded about the inhumanity of Soviet women, since they are in the shower and have to clean up in order to go to the concert. A few hours later, the prisoners arrive at the concert hall, where they prepare for their performance. Many of them are still afraid to go on stage and believe that this is just a mockery before their execution. Soon, Soviet women and German prisoners appear in the hall. There is deathly silence in the hall because women see the Germans in front of them who have been killing their fathers, husbands, and children for several years. A couple of minutes later, Colonel Pavlov also comes to the concert, who immediately invites Natalia to dance. During this, Klaus meets a beautiful woman and leaves the main hall. A couple of minutes later, he returns, but already alone, having got rid of Pavlov's assistant, who was trying to expose his true rank and name. At the end of the evening, Jacob announces the last dance, during which ladies can invite gentlemen. Resigned to what is happening, Soviet women dance with German prisoners and realize that they are very gallant and educated. After the concert, women escort captives to the camp, but they are not allowed further. Beauties in love are in no hurry to disperse and remain standing at the gate. Olga Alexandrovna and Natalia decide to allow visits and let the captives go home to the women on the condition that they return to the camp in the morning. Klaus, Max, and a few other men remain at the camp, as they haven't met anyone all evening. Klaus considers departed prisoners lucky and envious of them. At night, Max climbs into the window to Natalia, and woman takes him in a warm hug. The couple have a great time together, after which Max returns to his place. Here he is attacked by Klaus, who has ambushed an old colleague and his teacher. Hitting him on the head, Klaus takes Max away in an unknown direction. Andrei witnessed this, but could not do anything as he was afraid. Soon, Colonel Pavlov arrived at the camp, having learned about what happened to his assistant during the concert. Andrei points out where Klaus has gone, and the cars follow him. Meanwhile, prisoner puts Max on the rails and leaves a farewell letter, as if on his behalf. Natalia followed prisoners and attacked Klaus to try save Max. Waking up, man defends the doctor and tries to strangle his ward. What is happening is interrupted by Colonel Pavlov, who appeared on the spot with his assistants. Klaus is still loyal to the German ideology and understands that his war is over. Unwilling to give up and becomes a victim of a military tribunal, he makes a symbolic gesture with his hand and throws himself under the train. Pavlov finds Max's farewell letter and takes him away for questioning. Some time later, Colonel arrives at the camp to return the imprisoned German. At the same time, Pavlov takes Andrei away, as he is no longer fit for service, and will go to a sanatorium for the mentally retarded and in need of post-war rehabilitation. Having received a paper flower, Natalia says goodbye to Andrei. In the evening, she learns that Stalin has concluded an agreement with the Allies, according to which the Germans must be returned to their homeland. Realizing that most of the prisoners are not in the camp, women make door-to-door tours and tells the news. During the months of life in the camp and the village, Germans managed to get used to the local rules and customs. They found women, fell in love, and started families. Now they do not have the right to choose and must return to their homeland, since this is Stalin's order. Women's dreams of a happy family life are broken because they will raise children alone. In the morning, a truck arrives to pick up the Germans who survived captivity. While everyone is loading into the car, Max says goodbye to Natalia, handing her a farewell letter. Returning to her office, woman holds Andrei's flower and Max's letter in her hands, realizing that she was left completely alone. And here movie ends. Thank you for watching and see you tomorrow at the same time.